pages of notes and he thinks he's gonna get done early.
2 weeks ago, I had a sermon ready. It's right here. I've still got it. It's right there. But I felt like God wanted me to preach that sermon on what makes a great pastor. And the next week, that sermon was still sitting there, but I felt like God wanted me to preach the sermon on what makes a great church. And in the intro to that sermon, I ranted against the church for not teaching me some things I felt like the church ought to have been teaching me. On the way home, my wife asked me, well, if you're going to rant about that stuff, are you going to teach about it? Open my mouth, insert my size 11 mouth blockage. So, this week I called those character defects. So this week I spent most of my week writing a sermon. It is 14 pages long.
2 a day.
All right. Now usually we do a 2 to 4 page sermon in roughly half an hour. Do the math, that's going to be like a long sermon.
Can we order in pizza about midnight?
So is that why Jim's here and not Dan?
Yeah, I warned Dan. No, actually, what I have is I have multiple character defects that I'm going to teach on and preach on. It's all one sermon, but it's situated so that I can break at many different points. So we're going to go for about a half an hour, and then we're going to break. Okay? So I have a very lengthy sermon, but no, dear, we'll be able to make it out of here in time. Let me start with a couple of very significant points. And maybe I should say these every week, but I don't know if I will. We all have character defects. Now, I've been a Christian for 38 years this November. And I've been working on my character defects most of that time. I didn't start right away, but I started early on because I figured out real fast. See, about a year after I became a Christian, my wife tried to commit suicide. Her parents were a long ways away. We're in Hawaii. She got nobody to go to. She didn't see any options, so she tried to commit suicide. That was after I became a Christian. I asked why. She said, because you're too hard to live with. After I became a Christian? Yeah. After I became a Christian. So, about a year after I became a Christian, I figured I got some work to do. I need to start remolding my personality. Now, I knew I was a hard case, as is evidenced by the people around me before I became a Christian. You know, they wanted to do a couple skate with her when I was dating her, and all I had to do was stand up and go, and they'd all just skate on, wouldn't even ask. Nobody dared cross me. I knew I was a hard case. But I didn't want to be that hard a case. I didn't want to lose her. I married her because I loved her. I liked what she was. I wanted that woman for my woman. And evidently she liked something about me. Not sure what. But after 38 years of working on my character defects, I can tell you this, I still got some. Some of them I'm still figuring out how to work on. And during the writing of this sermon, I actually learned some things about me that I had not yet figured out. Even about some of the character defects I've been working on. So if you think you don't have any character defects, you're lying. And I'm going to tell you, you're lying only to yourself. You ask anybody around you, they'll be happy to tell you, if they're honest, you got character defects. okay? If you don't believe me, come see me privately. I'll lay you out. Filet of human. Because that's what we are. We're human. Okay, number 2. It is very hard to help someone when you haven't addressed your own character defects. Let's take a nice simple one that everyone understands, alcoholism. If you're an alcoholic who is a chronic drinker and you're drunk every day for 23 hours and 59 minutes out of the day, it's real hard to help someone else get over their alcoholism, right? If you're an alcoholic, do you want to go to someone that's perpetually drunk for help? No. Take a different example that's not out of character. Well, maybe it's a character defect, but we're not going to talk about it. There's a pastor I know that told me he was a better marriage counselor than I was because he'd been divorced twice and I'd just been married to the same woman for 39 years. Now, who do you want advice from on marriage? Somebody that's been divorced twice and they're single now? Or somebody that's been married successfully, not just superficially, but truly happy, as any of you can attest to, for 39 years? Obviously, we learned something about making a marriage work. Obviously, somebody else did not. Okay? So before you go to someone for help about any character defect, think. Before you try to help somebody else with their character defects, think. And you better think twice. Helping somebody with character defects is a very good way to lose a friend. Think twice. You better make sure your relationship is good and you got this one down solid. If you struggle with anger issues but think you've got it under control, you better make sure you got it under control before you try and help somebody else with their anger issues. Do you hear what I'm saying? So with that said, it would be impossible for me to cover all the character defects there are out there. You go out on the internet and just type in quotation marks, character defect. You'll find people that say, I made a list, 112, 128, 145, 213. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of character defects. And what's funny is, I have an awful lot of those in my life, either now or before, or both. And I bet you do too. So if there's any particular character defect you want me to address, let me know. Not now, but let me know later. And I'll revamp my sermon to include that. How's that for an offer? All right. Now, with that said, do remember that I am an amateur. I am what's called a faith-based counselor. I have a lot of experience counseling people. I have not gone to school. I've taken some counseling courses at a Christian college and at a state university, but I have no degree. I'm an amateur with a lot of experience. And everything I do in counseling is based on the Bible. Pure and simple. The Bible and my own experiences. And what I've read. And I read a lot. Remember also that if you don't struggle with the character defect that I'm talking about, I still want you to listen because you might have a friend that's struggling with it and you might be able to help them. You might be able to understand them better so you're able to maintain a friendship even through their character defect. Then maybe you might not be able to maintain that relationship otherwise. So I would really challenge you to remember that you can learn from all of these. All right, nice long intro. That's why we probably won't do it every week. And remember, all these go up on YouTube. You want to hear them, see them, you need a reminder, go see Pastor Velcro. So I picked a secret. Do you know what most pastors' best sermons are? Is when they preach about an issue that's very real to them. Okay? Now, I chose for the first character defect an issue that's very real to me. I have overcome it to a large degree, not totally. When I was 7 years old, I put a young girl, a playmate, in the hospital because I lost my temper. The first character defect I want to talk about is called anger. Now, if I'm the only one that's ever struggled with anger here, then I'm surrounded by a bunch of liars. Okay? Some struggle with it more than others. Almost. Not everyone. There may be somebody out there that I've never met, but almost everyone struggles with anger at some point in their life. If they don't, they aren't living much of a life. So, what I'm talking here when I say character defect is I'm talking about anger, not righteous indignation, but I'm talking about anger that's difficult to suppress. Even if it's justified. Even if there's really a good reason, but it's anger that just boils up and you can't stop it. That's what we're talking about when we call anger a character defect. We're talking about uncontrolled anger. We're talking about anger that catches you off guard and usually causes you to do something that as soon as you've done it, you say, oh man, I wish I hadn't done that. Oh man, I wish I'd never said that. And usually we say and do those things because of anger. That's what we're talking about. Anger that clouds the mind and makes rational judgment almost impossible. So how do we deal with that kind of anger? What do you say? How do you deal with it?
Say woo-saw and count to 10.
You
Count to
yell
10.
when nobody's there.
My mom always said count to 10. You know what I learned?
How to count to 10 in a
1,
lot of
2,
languages.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What'd you say?
You just yell and scream when nobody's home.
Yeah, yell and scream when nobody's home. The problem is, we're talking about anger that crops up when you're around other people. And what are you going to do? Your judgment's all cloudy, you're not making rational judgments, and you're going to have the wherewithal to say, okay, I'm going to go home and then I'll get angry. I don't think so, darling.
I
Next.
usually keep my mouth shut till then.
I don't know, I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah. I mean, truly, what works for people?
Stay away from others.
Yes, lock myself in a cement room with a slot for a food dish and leave me alone. You know what? I'd probably still get angry. You know, it's part of being human for most of us. I found a website that specialized in how to deal with anger. I know they specialized in that because that was their title, How to Deal with Anger. Found a lot of websites with similar titles. And you know what most of them did? They described what anger was, its causes and effects, and they didn't talk about how to deal with anger. How to deal with anger, they never even got to that. And I thought, man, I missed something, so I went back and checked that website forward and backwards. I went through and read every single page I could find. It must have been on the secret page, and I didn't know the password, because I didn't find it. Yeah, my mom also said if counting to 10 doesn't work, take a time out. Well, we already dealt with that one. You probably aren't going to have the self-control to do that when you're that kind of anger, right? Another suggestion on one of the websites was go exercise. I think I just talked about that. You're probably not going to make that judgment. And you know what? If our football coach believed in that in high school, if I got mad at somebody and I clocked them in practice, he'd make me run a lap around our practice field. Our practice field was 1.5 miles around. And he'd make me run a lap. And we had 8 minutes to do it in. And all I did was get madder and madder with every step I took. You think counting to 10 made me mad? I ran a lap and a 1.5 mile lap. I came back and everyone stayed out of my way. And I usually played defense. Man, I had a clear shot at that ball carrier first few plays when I got done being punished. Because everyone had already figured out what the coach evidently didn't figure out. One website said, think before you speak. Yeah, okay, stupid suggestion. Another said, identify possible solutions. And I say, see the above regarding clouded judgment. Identify possible solutions, you idiot. I'm angry. One more stupid ideas. One of them said, meditate. I can just see that. I'm really angry. I'm going to go, oh.
You're gonna meditate.
I don't think so. I might go, om. You know what I'm saying?
What's the cause of anger?
What's the cause of anger? One website, we'll come back. One website said, try solving problems instead of becoming angry. Excuse me? Another said, apologize for your anger before you get angry.
I'm sorry.
I've done that. I'm sorry, I know you're not the cause of why I'm upset, but you're gonna get it anyway.
I don't think that's working for you. Okay, one website had a 5-step approach. Let's see what you think about this. Step 1, self-awareness. Identify the problem. Hey, I'm angry. I know what the problem is. I'm angry. Step 2, self-control. Think about potential solutions. I can't think when I'm angry. Step 3, think it through. Hey, dummy, see what I just said. Step 4, pick an option. I choose to redirect my anger at the idiot that wrote this. Step 5, check your progress. No problem. Following your advice, my anger is increasing fast.
So how angry did you get trying to look at all this stuff about being angry?
This page took me longer to write than any 3 of the rest of the pages in this sermon. I had to stop and back off. These are the so-called professionals. I was looking at websites from places like hospitals, Mayo Clinic. I was looking at websites from clinics that specialize in anger management issues. I was looking at sites where they're advertising that we can come into your corporation and help your employees learn how to deal with anger management issues.
Did any one of those sites tell you that you should use your feeling words?
Yes. I didn't write that one down. It made me too angry. I had feeling words all right. I want to feel your throat in my hands. I would like to feel your spinal cord through your stomach. Yeah, I like to feel you. I did find a couple things that might help deal with anger. For some people, okay? One of them was listen to some music that is calming. Well, if you got that much self-control, that might actually work. Music has charms to soothe the savage beast. It might work. Just don't do any of that hard punk rock stuff that makes you want to bang your head against somebody or something. I really like the other one. Eat something. Hey!
It works for me.
Yeah, that works for me.
Especially if it's chocolate.
When I get angry, I'm going to go eat something. Man, I've been angry a lot in my life. I think I could put on 100 pounds a year if that was my approach. One website suggested using humor to diffuse your anger. Listen, I do that all the time. Really gets my wife mad because my humor is sarcasm, and that's not good. When I'm angry, my sarcasm is bitter, biting, and harsh. I'm working on it, okay? I don't think humor is a good idea. You know, you're angry at somebody, you're going to make fun of them. That's funny. Ah! Well, I don't think they're going to laugh. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's not sarcasm. Some of the so-called experts said wrap a rubber band around your wrist and snap yourself with it. Now, I have actually seen people that worked for them. When they get angry, they go bam. One guy, when he got angry, he'd go bam. Bam! I think he's going to cut his wrist off. And he had a great big thick rubber band. This is one of my coworkers. It actually worked for him to a large extent. He sought professional help, and that's what they said. Others recommend refocusing your thoughts onto something more pleasant. What, like ripping their heads off? I mean, come on. Have I mentioned that anger brings out clouded judgment? Isn't that true? Like many people, I've struggled with an anger issue most of my life. I can honestly tell you that there isn't much that helps me control my anger, except to learn self-control and struggle to overcome my anger issue and keep it under control. It is not always easy, but with practice, it does become easier. You want an easier answer? Talk to God. Miracle from Him is your best answer. And what causes our anger? What causes our anger? Usually people.
You made me.
Usually people.
Hurt
You made me
feelings.
this way. If you wouldn't have said that, I wouldn't have got angry.
Yeah, most people that get angry, it's not their fault. Jim made me angry. He drove a red truck today. He knows I don't like red. Jim made me angry. He wore his hat and sunglasses into church. He knows I don't like hat and sunglasses.
Velcro made me angry. He used his frowny face in church.
Yeah, Velcro made me angry. He used his frowny face. Hey, let's own up to the problem. Jim, you didn't have to take them off. I was kidding you. Listen.
I wasn't taking a chance.
Well, there's 2 tables between you and him.
And I can't jump.
Yeah.
Listen, let's own up to it. If we're angry, it isn't because of what somebody else has done, it's because of how we're reacting to what they've done. Now, if we love them and exhibit love, anger is not going to be our response. Guilty? You hear what I'm saying? I don't have a lot of time, but I want to do one more.
Hang on, there's something else that, when you're not angry, think about the things that mark the beginning of your anger, so when it starts, you can begin to check it.
All right, Joe. You're right ahead of me.
Sorry.
It's Joe's, for those who don't know the inside joke. These two do that back and forth. When they're teaching classes, he's always jumping ahead of her, she's always jumping ahead of him. It's hilarious. Once in a while, somebody else will jump in front of their, they're right here, and they want to jump here. Once in a while, somebody else will, but it's these two. Yeah, I call that forewarned is forearmed. I didn't invent that saying. But if you know that you've got a problem, you think about what causes it and potential solutions to the problem, it should become less of a problem. It may not solve it overnight. But through thinking about and practicing, like I used to drive angry. I drove viciously angry sometimes. One night with my family in the car, and my wife said, "You drive like that with your kids in the car? You could have killed us all." And she was right. That night I decided, that was 1987, I decided I was going to learn a new way of driving. So I started thinking about what irritates me from other people. That's a code for what gets me angry. What irritates me from other people, and I started thinking about that. What am I going to do if somebody does this? Now, I didn't solve my problems overnight. I had to learn new behaviors. And that's what leads us into self-control. To me, this is very important to overcoming anger, so I wanted to cover it. I don't know, is it just me? But I think this is a character defect in virtually everybody. Virtually everybody struggles with self-control in one way or another. Some it's less obvious. Many learn to overcome it. And by the time we meet them, maybe it isn't an issue for them anymore, or at least not very often. But by nature, people are selfish and self-centered. Which means we want what we want, when we want it, and where we want it, and how we want it. And that's just a matter of fact. And self-control is not destroying others and achieving our desires. You know? That's the golden rule. Do unto others before they do unto you. Well, that's what we think. I have self-control. If there's one candy bar left and 4 people are reaching for it and I knock them all flat to go get it, that was self-control because I didn't kill them on the way. Isn't that how we look at self-control sometimes? But we need to learn how to overcome an excess of me first, because that's what I call that. We need a certain amount of me first, right? It's called self-preservation. Although maybe as a Christian we need to have no me first and self-sacrifice. How do we deal with the character defect of self-control? What do you think?
Again, be aware that it's a problem for you.
I think it's to realize that there are so many different forms of lack of self-control.
Oh, yes.
Because it doesn't just mean that you're going to get mad at people. You know, it can be that you don't have any self-control over the food that's in the fridge or over...
Yeah. It doesn't even, self-control is an issue. It doesn't even have to involve others. Whether it's a pill popper that keeps it in the closet or somebody that's eating excessively when nobody's looking, or whether it's somebody that, you know, doing pornography when nobody's looking. Whatever it is. Self-control doesn't have to involve other people. But usually if we struggle with self-control in one area, we probably struggle with self-control in other areas.
But piggyback on what
Amanda said.
this lady that looks like Amanda,
Yeah.
you know, there's different areas of self-control.
Yep.
And we may be able, good in self-control in one area, weak in another area. Realize that, like the eating issue.
Yeah.
That's where I've struggled with
Yeah.
self-control a lot. But there's other things I can control, so I strengthen my self-control in another area, and a lot of times it will bleed over, saying, okay, I've succeeded here. Let's try this in steps here on the eating issue.
And this isn't in my notes, but I'll throw it in as a freebie. We're going to see this example in later character defects. But take eating, for example, since it was brought up. I'm going to throw this out. Sometimes people don't overeat and they become fat. Genetics have a lot to do with it. Sometimes it's a matter of what they eat, poor choices. There are other factors, but self-control is often the biggest cause of overweight. Okay?
What's gluttony?
Well, that's lack of self-control when it comes to food. Gluttony is eating to excess. That gluttony, You know the old saying, do you live to eat or eat to live? Well, gluttony is living to eat. When eating is your number one focus, that's gluttony.
One thing that's helped me with the eating issues, and I know it's working because I lost 26 pounds since the last time I went to the doctor. That's what they said. I think it was more like 20. But let's say I want that bag of chips. I say, okay, if I do this, like if I do an extra 10 minutes on the bicycle, I will allow myself to have that bag of chips. It's easy to start with a small self-control like that.
Yep.
And balloon it out into the bigger ones.
On eating disorders, I've learned the best way to control my eating. The doctor said no more table salt. Man, the food tastes crappy. I don't want to eat it no more.
You could eat my cooking and it'd be
All right.
just about the same.
Let's try and finish up self-control here. I did find a really good Christian website, one that I've used for other topics. And they said self-control, we need to focus on self-control, especially when we often think about what we should have done. That would be a symptom of a self-control issue. They had a section called Are Self-Control Issues Sinful? Man, they danced all over this. And their end result was a yes, but it wasn't very strong. Okay? They said, here's where we're going to define self-control. Well, they didn't do that. They wanted you to do that. They didn't define what is self-control. They danced all the way around it.
It is kind of subjective, though.
It is. It's different for everyone. But self-control is basically not allowing your wants and desires to run your life.
How?
How? Yeah.
Say that one more time.
Self-control is not letting your wants and desires run your life. And you may quote me on that since I didn't steal that. That's me. That's my definition. Which makes it worth, a little bit, not much, since I'm not the professional.
That and $1.50 will get you coffee at McDonald's.
So what motivates our self-control issues? They had a whole section on that. They could have summed it up by saying see above, which didn't give you much. They never addressed how to deal with self-control issues. I was very frustrated. One website said you have to really want to change. Gee, thanks.
That's the first step.
Well, that's all they gave. To deal with self-control issues, you have to really want to change. Yeah. But you know what? That's the only thing that ever motivated me and helped me and worked for me, is my desire to change. I can't think of anything else of great value. You know how I started to learn self-control? I learned to sit in a dark, quiet room by myself, say and do nothing. No TV, nothing. When I was down at my mom's this week, I spent most of 2 days sitting on her back deck. Oh, I talked to my sister and my mother when they were out there. I didn't take my computer, wasn't watching TV. I was sitting on the deck, just watching the world go by. That's how I learned self-control. One of the things I used to struggle to do, you all know me and know I like to talk. If somebody else was teaching a Bible class, a Sunday school class, I made it a rule that I'd only make one comment in the whole class. Now, that means if in the first 5 minutes I've got something really important to contribute, I've got to stop and think, how important is this? Because there might be something more important later. So if I say something now, I can't say anything later. So I'd wait. That was self-control. And you know what was really self-control? Is when I get to the end of the class and I never did say anything because I had nothing at the end I wanted to talk about. Self-control kept me from becoming angry. That was what worked for me. Those two things were the area I worked with the hardest. Now that doesn't mean that's what's going to work for you. You have to figure that out. But let me tell you this, self-control issues and like anger usually come about because of other people. And my wife taught our children, we homeschooled much of their schooling, not all, but my wife taught them before school and after school and homeschool and public school, that if you have trouble dealing with certain kinds of people, that God will make sure those kinds of people come into your life to help you learn self-control, to help you learn how to deal with those kinds of people. So you know what I did? Before the eldest was even born, we'd already heard that. And I started seeking out those people. And that was before I was called Velcro. But my wife named those people lint. Now with Velcro, lint is bad. But those people hung out with me constantly. Everywhere we went, those people would find me. You know the people I mean. The ones that everyone else in church doesn't want to talk to, because if you say one nice word to them, they're going to be your shadow. And they're going to never stop talking to you. And they're never going to stop coming to you and hanging around with you. And they're going to drive you insane.
And your family.
And my family, your family. I learned to deal with the people that drove me nuts the most. Anger and self-control, they go together. The best solution for anger is self-control. Father God, we ask that you would help us to learn self-control. Help us to learn to control our anger. But Father, most of all, help us to see others with your eyes. Help us to understand what you would have us understand. And help us to live our lives to serve you by serving others. In the name of Jesus Christ, our risen Lord. Amen. 1, 2, 3.
Attitude of Christ.
Whoa, that was
You
wimpy.
slow it down.
1, 2, 3.
Attitude of Christ.